Welcome back to Reading Bear. Today, we will take a look at some new revenge stories. And if you enjoyed my content, please don't forget to subscribe to my channel and post some bear emojis in the comments. Let's go!
First one is titled, My Great-Grandfather, the Salty Badass. This story happened about 100 years ago. My mother and grandmother told this story often when I was growing up. Background: my great-grandfather, GGF, lived on a houseboat in a swamp in southern Louisiana. When I say southern, I mean so far south that people in New Orleans were northerners, with his wife and dozen or so children. He supported his family by trapping crab and crawfish in the swamp. He would set traps at night and empty them in the morning. The antagonist, my GGF, noticed that his traps were unusually empty for several days in a row. He figured that someone was emptying his traps in the middle of the night or early morning before he could get to them. He had no idea who this could be. Now, this area was very remote. There really wasn't any law enforcement presence. It was very much like the Wild West. The preparation: my GGF decided to set a trap for the night thief. One night, when setting his crab traps, he strung fishing line between them with fish hooks tied in every few inches. The line was strung so that it was just below the surface of the water and was therefore not visible, especially in the dark. The swamp was only about thigh to waist deep. He then laid in wait with his single-shot .22 rifle for the thief to make his rounds. The revenge: after many hours of waiting, his patience paid off. He heard splashing as the thief became tangled in the fishing line and stuck by the fish hooks. With the thief immobilized, he took aim with the rifle. At that time and place, no one would have given it a second thought that he had killed the man, but that is not the kind of person my GGF was. He did shoot the thief, but he had loaded the rounds with a special load. Instead of bullets, he shot him with rock salt. You've heard of salt in the wound. What about when the salt creates the wound? The thief eventually extricated himself from the traps and limped off. My GGF never saw him again, and no one ever messed with his traps again. Next one is titled, She Proved Me Gay and Slept with Other Men. I, being in the US Army, became attracted to a woman who I end up marrying. At first, she's all I could ever ask for in a woman. Sweet, caring, one hell of a cuddler. Doesn't really like video games like I do, but makes an effort to get into them so we can spend time together doing something we both enjoy. Let's call her Sheila. I met Sheila through one of the other soldiers I worked with, who we will call BB, battle buddy, since he was not at fault in this. It was in the middle of the week, and I had just gotten a work order finished up and was taking a quick break for a drink of water. I heard BB asking a few other soldiers if they were open for a date for this coming weekend. Long story short, BB had a female friend who was looking for a date for a movie that coming weekend. I offered to go with his friend, big mistake, and she and I hit it off rather well and continued to see each other. Months pass, it hasn't been enough time for me to consider marriage yet, but she has some spontaneous ailments, seizures, and they were legit, spring up out of nowhere. Since these only seemed to happen in her sleep, and my command wouldn't let me stay off post with her without being married, lightbulb. We got a courtroom wedding 2 weeks later. The added bonus: not only could I stay with her while she slept to be ready in case of another episode, but my TRICARE would fully cover her medical costs. I was happy, she was happy. I got to tell my command, now you can't stop me from staying with her, and we all lived happily ever after. Except we didn't. Things went well for a while, but after a bit, I started noticing things. Things like her needing to take her mother to the doctor's office quite frequently. Her mother was sickly, so I didn't think much of it at first, or needing to head to the Walmart one town over because the one in our town didn't have what she needed in stock. Things like the car I bought and let her use was seen parked in a lot next to several different trailer parks in a month. Well, as luck would have it, right as I started to get suspicious, I had to go to Korea. So, sidelining the investigation until I was able to continue, I packed, kissed my wife goodbye, and let the army send me where they wanted me. I spent a year in Korea, then came down on orders for Texas. I went there. It was there that I found out exactly what was going on, courtesy of her mum, brother, and her aunt and uncle. This woman was sleeping with 60, not even kidding, in the slightest, different men, most of them soldiers. Her excuse to her family was, "Frizzmaster, me, is gay, and doesn't want to come out. So, he's pointing out the men I can sleep with since he knows that they're clean." So, basically, this woman is using me as a paycheck and meal ticket and sleeping with everything with a pulse that happens to be male. The icing on the cake is that 2 weeks after I get the good news, she calls me and confesses to cheating on me, once. The only reason she confessed? She was pregnant, and there was no way I could be the father, given that I was in a different state at the time and the father was African American. I am very much not African American, having been called neon white on more than one occasion due to my Irish ancestry. So, there was no possible way this child would look like me, at all. So, my wife felt the need to break the news to me before she had the baby because she could no longer hide it. Well, things happened. I went back home, without her knowing, and removed my belongings from the house I bought to keep her from selling them once she realized what I was about to do. I started divorce proceedings. This is revenge number 1. I saw her boyfriend, not the baby's father, new guy entirely, driving my car. So, I enlisted the help of her aunt and uncle to get my car back. They pulled up behind him in a parking lot, got out and talked to him normally, at which time I walked up from the other side of the parking lot. Her uncle asked to see the keys, and upon receiving them, began taking the car key off of the ring, and waved me forward. I walked up, took the car key from him, looked at the guy, and said, "Hi, my name is Frizzmaster, and this is my car. I'm taking it now." I waved him over to the sidewalk, removed everything from the car that didn't have my name on it, left the items with him, then got in my car and drove off. I found out later that day that he had packed everything and left her. Apparently, he had been living in my house, eating my food, sleeping in my bed, and wearing my clothes. Plus, she had been using the money I sent her every month to pay for his court costs and child support costs. Well, months went by, our court date came up, and my lawyer recommended that I file for the sole use of the vehicle and the property since it was obvious that she had committed adultery and didn't have a leg to stand on. We go to court, she counter-files for the exact same, and since she refused to release the results of a paternity test, I get stonewalled. The exact words used by the judge were, "I'm sorry, but without proof of paternity of the child, I cannot, in good conscience, approve either of these motions." So, we set a new date for a private hearing with the judge, and we wait. Nearly 3 months go by, and the court date was finally near. I walked into the courthouse, met up with my lawyer, who had a demonic glint in his eye at the time, and I was about to find out why, went into the courtroom, and waited. 20 minutes later, Sheila walked in, shot me a dirty look, which I did my best to ignore, and sat down. The judge came in 5 minutes later, the court was called to order, and the divorce trial commenced. Here, I found out just what had given my lawyer the twinkle in his eye earlier on. He proceeded to ask Sheila a series of questions, including, "Is my client the father of your child? When was the child conceived? Where was my client during the time at which your child was conceived? Do you know who the father of your child is? Have you received child support from the father of your child?" Basically, he questioned her into a legal corner in which she either had to answer truthfully or lie and suffer the legal ramifications of perjury in the face of easily provable evidence. She answered truthfully, lucky for her, and the court case continued. She presented her argument, littered with dirt she was trying to throw at me, insults to my person, questions about my sexual orientation, and claims that I was having a relationship with her 18-year-old cousin. I, falling back on my military training, simply sat up straight, folded my hands in front of me on the table, and stared at a spot on the wall slightly above the judge's left shoulder. I answered every question asked of me, offered no personal opinions, threw no dirt, and refused to sink to her level and question her sexuality. Subsequently, she had a more and more confused look on her face as I refrained from bad-mouthing her like she was doing me, and the divorce trial went by rather fast. At the conclusion of the trial, the judge looked over the paperwork submitted one last time, then looked to the both of us. "Are there any closing remarks or claims that need to be made?" Sheila made one last parting swipe about me currently living with her aunt and uncle. I had rented my own apartment months ago, after finishing my military time and going back home, and I merely shook my head and resumed staring at the wall. The judge took one last look over the papers, set them down, and spoke the greatest words I have ever heard in my life. Well, looking over the evidence and testimonies presented, there really is only one decision I can come to. Mr. Frizzmaster, I am approving your motions for the exclusive use of the vehicle and property, upon undeniable evidence of adultery. Mrs. Frizzmaster, the only one of your motions I am granting today is your request for a no-contact order, and that is more for Mr. Frizzmaster's benefit than your own. You seemed very combative and willing to cause him legal damage that he was not due, and your repeated attempts to overtalk me while I was reviewing the paperwork did not speak well of you. You no longer have a claim to either the property or the vehicle, and will not contact Mr. Frizzmaster unless it is to have him clarify which items do not belong to you. Sheila had the audacity to work up a sniffle and ask the judge, "But where do I go? What do I do for a place to live?" The judge looked back at her and replied, "Well, Mrs. Frizzmaster, you have 30 days to figure that out, after which you will not set foot on that property again, or else you will be held in contempt of court." Next one is titled, How Arrogance Sunk a Whole Program at an Institution. Background: I'm a teacher of math and science, let's call me Miss Edu. When I was fresh out of college, the job market wasn't so wonderful. I was great at what I do, but I absolutely suck at doing interviews. Coming to a point of almost giving up, an opportunity was handed to me. A former lecturer of mine recommended me to a higher institution for an assistant lecturer position, which was awesome, or so I thought. I went in, did the interview and was hired right on the spot with the stipulation that I would work for a year being tested on contract, and if I performed well I'd be hired permanently. I did exceptional. I got the highest evaluation score in my department, got not one bad student evaluation, and was made the secretary of my department as well as the social development coordinator. Things took a turn when I got the second half of my contract and realized that I would essentially not be employed for the summer term. I fought tooth and nail. My department head, Mrs. Pye, false name, fought tooth and nail, but no one would budge. Disappointing as it was, I was out. 2 weeks before the start of the fall term, Mrs. Pye called me. "Mrs. Pye, Miss Edu, will you be coming back to work with us for this term?" Me: "No, I haven't heard anything from the institution since my contract ended 3 months ago." Mrs. Pye: "That's funny because they have a timetable prepared for you." That was the beginning of a lot of back and forth between the institution and I. I was told to write a letter stating why I was upset with not being paid for 3 months. Really, people? I was told that if I returned they'd put me back on contract. Well, fat chance of that happening. I was told I was not privy to the information being discussed about me. And at the end I was subtly told that no other job would want me, like they were all I had. I already had 4 job offers. In the end I got a job with better pay, more flexibility and more respect. A week later I was called begging to take my old job back. The revenge. A month later I was in transportation with a new student who I discovered was in the program I taught at my old job, and being petty I struck up a conversation. Me: "Not to bother you, but can I ask a question?" Student: "Sure." Me: "Do you have a math teacher?" Student: "Yes, but we were told that she's still on vacation and she wouldn't be returning for another couple of weeks." Wheels starting to turn in my head. Me: "By any chance do you know the name of this teacher?" Student: "Yes, her name is Miss Edu." Me: started chuckling. "I'm Miss Edu and the institution has been aware for weeks that I'm not returning. You can tell your classmates that." Needless to say, she was upset and shocked. To get a certification for the program it is a must that you complete the math course. After that I made sure to call the lecturer who had recommended me. I informed him what had happened to me and told him if he really cared about his students he wouldn't recommend anyone else to that place. He was livid. The fallout. News started to spread at the institution that there was no math teacher and majority of the students left the program. This program was also subsidized by per student by the government, and with so many students leaving the institution took a hit financially. In the middle of the term, they got the overseas external examination results of the students I'd taught. It was the best result the institution had ever had for math. 98% of students passed. I was called, congratulated and offered back my job. They still hadn't found a replacement. No thank you. Because of what had happened to me, no one would recommend a decent teacher to the institution, so they got stuck with someone who was taking a semester off of college because he had failed too many courses. After 3 months he left and the program further went down the drain. They lost out on their subsidy. Because of that they couldn't pay other teachers to do the program, so no one would take up teaching the classes for the other courses. Their reputation went downhill. And 3 years later they are still calling me to consider coming back. What do I do now? I deter as much people I can from applying to that place by telling them my story. Next one is titled, Neighbor Fed Up with Dog Crap. Outside my and my neighbor's houses is a small strip of grass right next to the pavement. There is a very annoying person up the street that every day allows their dog to crap on that grass and never picks it up. They have been asked multiple times to stop it but just reply with obscenities. My neighbor has just enacted their revenge and I'm still laughing my head off at the pictures. He's been picking the crap up and putting it in a bucket for weeks, and last night he returned to sender. On the annoying person's front step there is now an inch-thick layer of dog crap with a little flag stuck in it saying, "I think you dropped this." Next one is titled, You Want to Disrupt My Entertainment? Fine, now you're the entertainment. So, my neighbor across the street is this militant retired cop, the poster boy of toxic masculinity. We call him Stone Cold because he looks like Stone Cold Steve Austin. Real ducking prick, always yelling and cussing his dogs, his wife, etc. Our normal dance is he sits in his garage at night drinking, alone mostly, but sometimes with his cop buddies, till late, keeping me up. So I've moved my drumming practice to 8 AM with all my windows open, because that should be fun to listen to after a night of heavy drinking. Anyway, tonight he got into a huge fight, first with his daughter, a single mum still living with them, then his wife. Apparently, the daughter is pregnant again. He thinks she's a ducking slut because she got knocked up again by her scumbag boyfriend. Mum points out Stone Cold's hypocrisy by calling him a crooked cop. I opened my window, didn't bother to hide the fact that I was doing so, and watched the fight with my blinds open. I'm sure he saw me standing there with my bag of microwave popcorn like I was live at the Jerry Springer show lol. He's lucky I didn't record it and put it online. I will next time. Next one is titled, He Trusted His Family and in the end, his father kicked him to the curb. I was hired at age 12 to start work in the family business. I worked my way up from doing basically coffee runs to knowing more than all the guys I worked with. I trained people who would then be paid double my salary because someday all this will be yours and this is what they call paying your dues, my dad said. I worked every day after school, I worked on the weekends, I never had a summer off, never had a full Christmas or any other holiday. I was told to work hard and someday. I wanted to go to university, and although I was told it would be covered, silly me, I must have misread the bulletin. There was no cash for me to go. But Dad somehow was able to go big game hunting in Africa for the 3rd time the next year and put a massive addition on his home. But that was okay, I still could work full-time the day after high school graduation. Work I did, overtime was not given, that was for the employees, not the future owner. I improved systems, increased sales, handled the entire place when Dad would go hunting, fishing, traveling, or those numerous business meetings that smelled of fancy drinks and smoke afterward, but that was okay, I was earning my right to the business. Work hard and soon became the motto. 20 years go by, I am 32 at the time and it's darn well time to take over the business and he knows it. I was underpaid for 20 years, never had a real holiday, gave up university, sacrificed pretty well everything and it was time. So, Dad decided that weekend to talk to the competition and he sells the business to them. Within 2 weeks, I was unemployed. He tells me though that he put in a good word in with the new owners and said I would still have a job. Then he paid me to the exact penny, by law, what he owed me and complained it sure was a lot of money. Every time I bring it up he tells me, you were lucky to have a job. What are you complaining about all the time? Oh, and the new owners never heard a word about hiring me, they had enough people it seems. Next one is titled, The Company Stabbed Her in the Back Only to Replace Her with a Younger Woman. We had the most amazing secretary. She'd do anything for anyone. She would always bake cupcakes for someone's birthday and bring them to their desk on their birthday. She'd have headache tablets, chocolates, mints at her desk, and would always take time out to talk to you if you had a grievance with someone or something, and it would never go further than her. She'd leave little notes with your paperwork with cute smiley faces and would go the extra mile when making friends with new employees. Every client we had would always say how amazing she was, and we'd all agree, she was a wonderful person. Head office fired her for a younger, prettier, thin model who one of them was sleeping with. Last one is titled, He Was Stealing Lunches, So I Spiked His Burger. I was working a very demanding job. We had 3 shifts and they were staggered to overlap by 3 to 4 hours to increase production. I worked the 3rd shift from 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. and had to bring my lunch because we weren't near anything open then except for a gas station. A few of us noticed our lunches were being eaten. Typically, it was anything in a bag from a restaurant or a Tupperware container. Often all the lunches were pilfered and dessert or snack items were taken. We spoke to management about it, but they were hesitant to do anything. They suggested it was one of us doing it to our fellow shift members. One day, my entire lunch, drinks, everything was taken. I had to buy candy bars and soda to eat, and a co-worker shared some of his remaining lunch with me. So basically 12 hours of very physical work on candy and a bit of rice. I was absolutely furious. I knew it wasn't my shift members and they were just as angry as I was. I told them that I was going to set a trap and we would get some vengeance on the person who had been stealing our food. I stopped by McDonald's on the way to work the next few days and ordered a quarter pounder with the cheese on the side. I had gathered some palmetto bugs, giant flying roaches, about 2 inches long, and put 2 on the burger and placed the cheese on the top. I then labeled the bag and put it in the fridge. I was careful to throw it away each day and replace it with a new one. I really wanted to burn this bastard. On day 3, I came down to the lunchroom and the bag was in the garbage. I was just giddy thinking of what happened. I dug through the trash and found the bag, the box from the burger and the burger with a few big bites out of it. Our entire shift was laughing our butts off all night. In the morning, I was told to stick around and meet with the plant manager. I was confused and scared, but I technically did nothing wrong. I get sent into his office and here is a second shift employee, recently hired, and the brother of a long-time employee. I'm told how he ate some food and a person had placed roaches on it. So I was the bad guy. I explained that I did, in fact, have a burger with roaches on it, but that's my business. He shouldn't have been stealing food, he countered by saying that he thought it was his. I pulled the bag out of my backpack, with my name on each side. He wanted to receive an apology and be excused from work for his inconvenience. The manager said he would discuss it further with me and asked him to leave. He said he knew I had set a trap. I didn't respond. He started laughing and said he would give him a written warning for stealing food. But I was told not to put any roach food in the fridge from that day forward. I told everyone I talked to that he was the one stealing food. His brother tried to make me the bad guy for baiting him with a roach burger, but the damage was done. He was being trash-talked and confronted all week. Finally, he resigned. I still get a good laugh thinking about him biting into the burger and getting juicy roach guts in his mouth. Thanks for listening.